Welcome back to the Paranorm Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. Parapalooza 2024 Live was a success. Thank you to everyone who stopped by the chat, who called into the program, and for those who contributed throughout the night to the Indiegogo to help us reach our goal. We made so much headway this past Saturday night, and it's just incredible to see how far we have come in our fundraising efforts, all thanks to you out there who are as excited as we are for the Night at the Night House RPG investigation happening on the 28th. A truly one-of-a-kind paranormal event that only a madman would attempt. Well, lucky for you out there listening, lucky for the world. The hosts of Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen are kind of funny that way. We're all mad here. That is a Mandela effect, by the way. Well, kind of. It's in the book, but not the movie, which is where everyone remembers it coming from. Getting sidetracked, Parapalooza 2024 brought guests from numerous backgrounds and areas of focus together. Many worlds met. From investigators to Bigfooters, UFOs, to crystals and meditations, to Pukwudgies. Y'all, we communed, and it was an incredible thing to behold. Also, Joey is doing just fine. For anyone who was worried, I do want to thank our guests for the evening and encourage my listeners to follow them online. I have listed every one of them with a social link down in the show notes. Go give them a follow. I do hope everyone who tuned in learned or heard something new, gained valuable education, or were at the very least entertained. If you were unable to catch it or stay for the entire 5.5 hours, you can still watch the replay over on the B3 YouTube channel. Now, if you are listening to this episode the day it was posted, today is Tuesday. While we made major progress toward our final goal during Parapalooza, we still have a teeny tiny bit to go and just half a week to do it. But I have faith in this community of devout paranormalists and skeptical believers. The campaign officially comes to an end this Friday. If you would like to participate in the Night at the Night House event as one of our virtual investigators, there is still time. Just $5 gets you a link to watch the investigation as it unfolds, and just $25 gets you that RPG Investigator Pass for the evening. We would like to have as many folks involved as possible, so please consider sharing the campaign with your friends and family members that you think would also be psyched to come be a part of the action. All right, on to today's guest. Unfortunately, my chat with Blaine Duncan had to be postponed. He came down with some major ick. Sick sucks. As excited as I am to have him on, there exists no world in which I would ever expect someone to tough it out just so I can get to talk to them. I do wish him very, very well, very, very soon, and I hope to learn a heck of a lot about the Amityville haunting at a later date. That being the case, though, I've got a good one for you guys today. I think you all are really going to enjoy. I first met today's guest at the Tombstone Wild West Paracon earlier this year. I told y'all I met some really neat people there, and this lovely lady is no exception. My guest has been featured on well-known radio, television, and podcast programs, including shows like Ghost Hunters and podcasts like The Grave Talks. She is an author, award-winning journalist, and paranormal historian. She owned and operated Bisbee Historical Haunted Tours, has served as editor-in-chief of the online paranormal magazine Spirits of Cochise County, and currently serves as a member of the Cochise County Historical Society. She is also part of the team who launched the Bisbee Ghost App, the most factual, most downloaded app for exploring the haunted history of Bisbee, Arizona. Please enjoy my conversation with Francine Powers.
Like you said, I'm a Bisbee native, Cochise County native, and I used to be a reporter. But for my teen years, I started to research the town's history, and I never stopped. And then when I was a reporter in the different places, newspapers I worked for, they allowed me to do features about ghosts in Bisbee. And at the time, nobody covered it, and so with that, I got to publish the first ghost stories in Bisbee, newspaper wise. And then in 2004, I published a book, Mirena, Don't Be Afraid, and that was the first ghost book in Bisbee. And then, so years later, many years later, about 10, I started the Bisbee Historical Tours. I started off with walking tours in the day, just straight historical. And then there was a person in town who had golf carts, and he asked me to do that for him. So I was actually doing my own tours and then working for him on the golf cart. And I was trying to find a way to do my haunted tours and in a different way, because Bisbee is very, very hilly. It's very got tons of stairs, so a lot of people can't do a tour, and so it's just a different way to do it. So I would lease his golf carts in the evening. We put lights on it, and oh my gosh, people loved it, and it was a lot of fun. We had so many experiences. And of course, I did take him to my childhood home, and that's up Tombstone Canyon, and that's where I'm from, at the very top of Old Bisbee.
Mm-hmm.
And my house is still there, but it's in the mountain. And as if you'd walk up to it, because it's like almost at a dead end of the hill. It's like you can feel it to this day. Just walking up, it's like the house on Haunted Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as far as I understand, the new owner, I talked to him, and he's making it into an Airbnb. So,
Ooh, okay.
yes. And so, before we get into that, I am an author as well. I published Haunted Bisbee and Haunted Cochise County and Wicked Bisbee. And Wicked Bisbee is a straight history. But with all my books and all my writing and all my telling, I deep dive into my research, whatever it's a site, a building, and I grab the actual history of that, and then I um, talk about the ghost that's supposed to be haunting there. And
Mm-hmm.
if if someone, there's this big legendary story that a person died here or several people died there, I try to see, if it's true. If it's true, then it most likely has been published somewhere else, as far as the newspapers, um, maybe some reference books as far as the actual death of whoever it is. And
Mm-hmm.
then that's a good way to find out if it's a tell or a story. So I think that's very important to do for everybody, especially if they're paranormal investigators, because it takes a lot of money and equipment to travel there and to record whatever you're doing. And if it's not true, that's just a big letdown. So that if and I'm sure at this point everybody knows to just research that story, especially if you get in on the tour. Because when I
Mm-hmm.
did my haunted tours, I made sure to like I said, do all that background work and then make sure it's true before I tell people, so and so died here or whatever. But then, then there's personal experience where someone says they've seen a ghost there and there's no record of them dying there. And, but then that's back to the residual hauntings, which is a memory, and the intelligent haunting, which is when the ghost interacts with you.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, so they're all my books are doing really good, and I'm happy to share all of that. And if you want to dive right back into what we call the scary
Sure.
house.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, yes, yes, I do want to talk about your books, absolutely, because people need to check them out. I know that they are doing very, very well. I saw they were. One of them was in the top 100 charts, like twice. Is that right?
Yes,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh!
and that's
Congratulations! Oh
haunted.
my gosh.
Thank you. Haunted Cochise County's done that a couple of times. Haunted Bisbee is like really popular, and I've made
Hmm.
the top 100. I don't know because it's been out for a few years, but I made it probably about 10 times. So that's
Whoa.
really fun. When I look and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, let's talk about those because I want you to give my audience like paint the picture of what they can expect in and maybe talk about some of the stories. But before we get too far away, yes, I definitely want to dive back in to the house on Haunted Hill and
yes.
hear that early story, that early formation and your introduction to the paranormal.
Oh, sure. Well, my family, like I said, we're Bisbee natives. My mother, it's her family that's from Bisbee. My dad's family is from Douglas, Arizona. They both passed away, but we they had 6 children, and at the time when all of this was happening at the home, uh, there was 5 of us. My little brother wasn't born yet, but my dad was a miner. He was underground. He started as a truck driver in the lavender pit, and then he worked his way up by going getting a position in underground mining, and he was a driller. Um, so we were a company family. So
Mhm.
my parents bought that house, I think, a few years before I was born, and um, when I was around 5 or 6 years old, that's when these paranormal activity started there. And it started, nice and easy with the lights going off and on when no one was around, or footsteps. And but then it just started getting heavier and heavier. And uh, my mother, we are Catholic. Um, we belong to the St. Patrick's Church, and which is down about 2 miles from the house. And I'm saying that for a reason. So, it started getting so bad, and it started scaring everyone, that my mother asked the priest. There was 2 priests at the church at the time to come and bless the house. And to bless the house, the priest will walk around in the rooms with a prayer and bless each corner of the room, excuse me, to protect the family if there's any kind of spirits or paranormal activity. So that kind of worked for a few days, but then my mom was uh, laying down in the day taking a nap, and she opened her eyes, and on the wall, her door was open, and across through that was the hallway wall, and she saw a face with no eyes just floating on the wall.
Mm. Mm-mm.
And so then it took a twist. Everything started getting dark. It was much more than just the footsteps and the lights going off and on. And so I woke up in the middle of the night, and I thought somebody was at the side of my bed, and it was pitch black. And like I said, there was a bunch of us kids, so I had 2 of my other siblings with me in the same room, and then I had a set of twin sisters who were teenagers at the time in another room. And I thought it was one of them, so I started calling their names. And the person I could see in the shadow, and it was I kept calling the name, and I looked at my nightstand, and I had this is the 70s, so a big lamp with a lampshade,
Mhm.
and that shadow kind of stopped and looked and put their hands on the lampshade, and I could see they were long and tapered, and they were kind of tilting their head, kind of listening to me. And then it walked right by me, and then it stopped and turned around and stood at the foot of my bed. And I could see all of her at that point because the window at her side, uh, the the curtains were open, and it was the moon must have been full because I could see her, and she had her hair up in a tight bun. She had a lacy blouse and a long skirt in it. I could hear her boots and I could hear her skirt moving as she was. And I sat up and I kept, trying to call my sister's name, but then she just wouldn't. And we locked eyes and I could still see her. And so I laid back down. This is when I was 5 or 6 years old. And she moved back, and then I could see her. She moved, like in between the beds, so I could see all of her at that point now. And she put her hands in prayer, and she put her head down, and then she just went straight through the floor.
Oh, okay.
So that was, that. And then, my other brothers and sisters, my other sister Jenny, she was watching TV, and all of a sudden there was puffs of cigarette smoke coming out of nowhere, and just a bunch of stuff like over the top.
Yeah.
And so my mother went back to St. Pat's and talked to the priest. And so the priest who originally blessed the house wasn't there that day, so Father Rice came, and he came to see what was happening, because this one thing else happened that before he arrived.
Okay.
We were sitting at dinner and on the dinner table, and there's the yard goes all the way around the house, and it's pretty big property, but it's on the mountain. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's like carved into the mountain, and then there's a highway right behind it, and then it's just, I don't know how to explain it. But anyway, so we were eating, and then all of a sudden, because we had a bunch of dogs, they started howling and barking, and it made us stop. Like, what are they doing? And then all of a sudden, we heard what sounded like tin cans being drug around the entire house. And as my dad got up to look out the window, all of a sudden in the attic above us, you could hear a real fist fight. Like, you could hear the smacks and them falling down. So my dad went over to the door, opened the door that went to it, and it has a steep set of stairs. And as soon as he opened it, it stopped. So that's why we, called the church again. So Father Rice arrived. I remember he was a very tall man, and he had on his the black gown. I don't know why. Because they wear different things for different whatever they're doing, but I don't remember. But he had his long gown on, and the black one, and he took all the information, and then he wanted to go directly upstairs. So he was going upstairs, and he started praying. And as soon as he was praying, my dad started following him. And then when the priest got to the top of the stairs and looked into the entire attic, he turned around and motioned my dad to stop. And then he prayed even louder. And then he was, now his back was to us, but he was like facing the entire room, the attic. And then he turned around, and as he was coming down, he got shoved from behind, and he actually fell and slid down, a lot of the stairs. And I just remember him, kind of being at the bottom of it, and he was disheveled, and his face was so pale. And then, when he gathered himself, he told my parents that he would be going to the church, and he was going to discuss, they were going to have a meeting with the bishop. And so at that point, we went and stayed, every night at my grandmother's house, which was down in Brewery Gulch. And, we would all pack in and sleep in her living room, because there's no way we were going to sleep there in the, as soon as it got dark. It was scary enough in the day, but when it got to night, it was just scary, heavy. It was
Mhm.
not a regular haunting.
Mhm.
So, not long after the priest arrived, he said that the bishop agreed to a exorcism on a structure. So, uh, they scheduled to have that done, and the other priest, Father Padilla, came, and he actually did it. It was not an exorcist, but it was an exorcism,
Mhm.
and so he came, and we were told to follow him when he starts moving around the house, and to know that God is with us and not to be afraid. So he did a mass, and one of the what other people were saying, because the church had um, communicated with people, and they were saying that a lot of it's coming from um, the basement as well. And it's odd, but Bisbee, our house had a basement,
Mhm.
and it had the floor heaters. And so we did a prayer over that floor heater, and then he had his little book, and it was the small ritual of an exorcism, because I went and I interviewed another priest to make sure, an understanding what happened, and he said, "Oh yes," and it is documented in the Tucson diocese. So we walked and followed the priest around, and as we started going into the house, I could start feeling a heavy, like the air got thick.
Mhm.
And when we got to my mother's and father's bedroom, the windows started trembling. They started vibrating, and then I was looking at everybody. Don't I not hear this? And I was getting so scared. And he just kept praying. And then we went into, as we were walking back to towards the through the dining room and in the kitchen, and on the other side of the kitchen was the laundry room, and
Mhm.
it had a thick, heavy door. Uh, so as we're walking there, I could start hearing this wind, and it just started getting heavier and stronger. And I was looking at everybody, and it seemed like the priest was reacting to the same thing I was, but everybody else just had their head down praying. And all of a sudden, the that laundry room, the door whipped open. It whipped open so hard it hit the back of the wall, and then it slammed. And then people screamed then. And then he just opened it himself, like he did the same thing. He opened it, and he told us to stay, and he went back into the laundry room,
Mhm.
and he just prayed. And and then eventually we got back to the same point where we started, and that was it. And so
Whew.
uh, I mean, just talking about it right now, I got some chills
Uh,
going.
I
But
it did it stop, like, basically stop after that? Did that do it?
well, it did calm down.
Okay.
So it did, but I think it didn't. It didn't actually exercise what was there. I think it just like shut it down for a little bit,
Okay. Okay.
because when my brother was born, and we were there for a little bit longer, but uh, he says that when he was like 3 or 4 years old, he used to be on the porch, and he would roll the ball, and then somebody would roll the ball back, and he'd hear a woman's voice, and
Oh.
then he'd hear a conversation between a man and a woman. So so like I said, I would do tours, and I would
Mhm.
take my golf cart up there. And I had to park somewhere, because we can't like park up there, because then the brakes would fail, I think, and they just roll down. But so
Mhm.
we'd have to
Mhm.
walk and stand in front of it. And
Mhm.
so I would, I don't know, I've been up there probably with tours, I don't know, probably 300 times.
Okay.
Actually, I'm much more than that. But so I got so many guests have sent me photos of about 10 to 15 figures on the front porch. Um, I've gotten, I remember doing tours and I'm there talking, and then we hear a growl, and it could be a puma, a mountain lion, because that's
Mhm.
how high it is, or
Mhm.
a dog, but it didn't sound like any of that. And so we heard it, my group, and we said, let's just get out of here. So we got into the car and actually went to the bottom, and that's where the Tombstone Canyon Road is.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I just told the rest of the story there, and they're like, that wasn't real. I mean, that was unnatural.
Yeah.
And let me
Yeah.
see. And then other people who are sensitive, and they've seen a man standing near it with a full cloak on. Uh, and one picture I did it a few years ago. I had a special Halloween cart tour because I moved. I moved up to Tucson and back in 2016. So it was like just a special thing that the new people wanted me to do for them. So during that tour, I got some more photos and I saw them on my phone, and I'm like, I see what this is, and I thanked him for it, but I had to get it off my phone because there were
Mhm.
actual picture of a demon,
Ooh.
and it I just couldn't, I couldn't believe it. They're like, "What is this?" And I got two pictures of the same exact figure. So I looked it up, and I guess I forgot to tell you the reason why I think we all think this has happened there is because those two set of twins, the teenagers, they went and borrowed from friends a Ouija board, and so they did the Ouija board, and I remember watching them, and my dad, thought it was great, and he was asking it questions and asking if there was money there, and it said yes. And so after that, not even days, that's when all of this started. And so, like
Oh.
again, we're Catholic, and my mom found out that they did the Ouija board, found it,
Mhm.
and went and outside and broke it on her knee and threw it in the trash. So we find out later, years later, like probably a lot of listeners, and that when you're getting rid of a Ouija board, you have to either burn it and I think bury it. And you just can't, what she did. And I think what happened is that portal was
Mm.
open with the Ouija
Mhm.
board, and then
Yeah.
she never shut it. So now that's why I think that house is just, swamped with different ghosts,
All
I
so
believe.
many different things. Yeah.
Yes. And so that photo, I was able to find it online, and it says it's connected to a Ouija board demon. So that makes perfect sense. And that's what's there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and because it was destroyed like that, and obviously it's long gone now, how have you researched, like, how to close it? Like, is there a way to close it at this point?
I'm probably, I'm sure there is, but I have not, like, I've brought also, a ghost a paranormal team there twice, and we've done some recordings in the front yard,
Mhm.
and uh I have a beautiful EVP of me talking and saying, do you remember me? And it comes back, and it's a deep raspy voice, and it says, yes, come inside. So
Oh.
I I am not going inside. So I stay in the yard, I mean, the not the yard, the road, and the road is so
Mhm.
steep, it looks like San Francisco, that kind of steep, and
Mhm.
it's just enough room for one car to go up or down. So if you're going up and a car's coming down, you got to back out of the way and let the car, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, and then another time, okay, this book came out in 2004. I gave that description of that female ghost, and then me and another group went up in 2007, and my dad, there's a driveway. It's just as steep, and he put pavement on it. So anyway, we walked up that driveway into the backyard, and then I just started, clicking away, taking pictures, and when we got back to look at the evidence, lo and behold, there was the photo of the exact ghost that I described in that book in the window looking at us.
Whoa.
So she's photographed. And
Okay.
other people have gone there, and I showed them the photo, and they're like, I have the same photo, but a different window.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
yes. And at the time, and that's another thing with the history of the house is that my family owned it, in the 60s until about 75. And that's when the Phelps Dodge mine closed, the open pit and underground operations. And now Freeport McMoran owned it. But so it closed down. So my parents, like a lot of other people, went bankrupt. And so we moved into another house. But where was I
Okay.
going with this? I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I might interject. I have got so many like follow-up questions. Um, can I ask, like, have you thought about like I understand the concept of okay, a Ouija board, it opens a window or a portal or a doorway, and you have to close it properly. Like I understand that concept. I don't know much about portals, so I can't really speak on it, but I understand how that could contribute to such a variety of haunting activity like you just described. But I was curious that what stuck out to me was the way you described your actual house and how it is situated in the mountain. Like I'm imagining like it's just jutted right in, like it's almost cut in the mountain to some extent. And
It
being
is.
that, like, have you given any thought to if being that so like that enmeshed with the earth, so close to the earth, and I know that there are various minerals and crystals, like especially in that area of Arizona, in the mountains there, that can encourage that kind of like support that kind of activity. Do you think maybe that played in also possibly to just the extent that the haunting went?
That's a very good question. And yes, I do. I agree
Yeah.
completely. And I was going to say that's one of the reasons I believe why Bisbee seems to be so haunted.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a lot to do with all of those minerals, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, yeah, and a lot of the residual are there too.
Yeah.
And there's over 2,000 miles of tunnel underneath Old Bisbee and Warren and Lowell. Those are satellites or other districts of the town,
Uh-huh.
and it's just right underneath. So there's a big
Oh.
honeycomb, and and then there were so many miners over the 100 or more years of mining there. It was one of the if not the largest distributor of copper and in the world at one
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes, I do agree that what you just said. Um,
Okay. Okay. And also, I have to ask you, do you have any children in the house right now?
uh, I do,
Oh,
but
okay.
they're in another room.
Okay, I was going to, call back to, the thing that I heard before we started recording. I you may hear it at minute 19. I started hearing singing. I was like, "Oh, no."
Yes, that's my
No, that's
four-year-old. She was on her microphone.
no, because
She
I was
likes to
gonna
sing "We Will Rock You."
I was good taste,
Sorry.
good taste. No, 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 I was gonna freak out if you said, "Nope, I'm alone." Like, "Ooh, girl, whew." Gosh, okay. So yeah, obviously I was gonna ask you like, of course, and we'll move on here in a second, but I'm so fascinated with haunted houses, because I lived in a couple growing up as well, and just the variety of ghosts that people can experience, and just the variety of paranormal. They're not necessarily ghosts or human, spirits. They can be other things too. They can be things that have never been human. But I was just going to ask you, like, because the initial blessing did not work. It worked for a second, and it did not work, and just like what that was telling you about the haunting itself. And I think we kind of answered that in all of that. Not necessarily all bad, not necessarily all good, just this like kind of mishmash, and very, very powerful. Obviously it had some staying power. um okay, that clearly paints a picture for me as to how you took the path that you did through life. A lot of people, they have these early experiences with hauntings and with the paranormal that ultimately lead them down the path to a place where they now do something to seek answers. They become a paranormal investigator. They become a parapsychologist. You became a writer and an author and documenting this kind of information. I would love to go ahead and get into your books a little bit. So we've got Haunted Bisbee, that was in 2020. And then you've got the two newer ones. That's Haunted Cochise County, March of last year, and then the most recent one, Wicked Bisbee, in October of last year. Can you give us,
Yes.
tell my audience a little bit about what they're going to find in these books? What kinds of stories, if you have any, like a favorite story that pops to mind, just some of that history and some of that haunted history, if you want to share that with us.
Oh, sure. Well, Haunted Bisbee, of course, is there were so many places to talk about, and of course, I covered the old, the legendary ones, and I also debunked a lot of stuff that's being said.
Mhm.
Um, I have a lot of personal uh, experiences as I talk about all of these sites. But one of my favorites is the Bisbee Restoration Museum, and I'll try to be quick about that.
Okay.
So, like I said, when I was doing my tours, I was on Main Street every single day, so I got to be friendly with everybody, and all the businesses. And this is a 50C museum, and it's a collection of uh, everyday items from people who live there, and it's
Hmm.
the People's Museum. That's what they call it. So it's really cool, and so the volunteers there told me that they had ghosts there, and I'm like, okay, well, great. So I was able to go with two of the volunteers that both have had an experience with a female ghost,
Hmm.
and we did a ghost hunt, and it was great because it was my birthday, and so we went in at night, and never been in there at night because it's a 3-story building, and it used to be the fair store, and it was a very well-to-do store. Like Bisbee was very wealthy at one point. It that was the town, and you could see it with the buildings.
Hmm.
Uh, it was the cosmopolitan. Uh, and I just like to make a correction. I saw, in the movie Tombstone. I love Tombstone, but Tombstone was not. It was not Bisbee, and I saw a documentary on Netflix. The same thing. No, that's not true.
Hmm.
They had their silver mine. I mean, they're amazing. Their history's great, but Bisbee is different because it has a mine that lasted over 100 years, and again, there was a lot of wealth. So the fair store was owned by the Frankenberg brothers, and eventually, it died out, but it turned into a lot of other things. And then finally, it was donated by the Norton family, which was part of the Frankenberg. They were both partnership. They donated to the foundation, Restoration Foundation, and they made it into the museum. So back to the ghost hunt. We sat on a middle floor, and we all the lights were off, and we just started communicating with who might be there. And so in that one where we were, because we could hear upstairs and downstairs at the same time. So the volunteers said they had seen a woman standing at the top of the third floor and near the sewing machines. And so they've seen her a couple of times. When they come in, they can hear a soft voice, but they can never really make what it was saying. And so as we were sitting there, we asked the ghost to tap or make a noise because we want to know her name. It tapped when we hit a letter, and we did. And it was amazing because it's hard to get, have a ghost so being, strong enough to communicate.
Right,
But
right.
her name was Elena,
Mhm.
and we found out she was in her 30s. We also found out through a series of questions if what she did there, and she does know who Ben Frankenberg was,
Mhm.
and that was one of her bosses. So okay, we can see what era she was, and then she said she was a seamstress, and no to a cashier or anything like that. So
Mhm.
that makes sense why she was seen near the sewing machines. So she said that she loved working there. She was happy, but she also would bring her son, a little boy, and that he's here too. But he's not being mischievous. He just likes to play games because he'll move things around. And they looked at each other after all this, communicating with her, that things have been missing, and then it turns up somewhere else, like on one counter, and then all of a sudden somewhere else. So after that was done, she was done. I think she was tired, and so we sat there in the quiet, and then you could hear small footsteps coming from one corner of the building right over us onto the other side,
Whoa.
and that was awesome. So that's
Yeah.
one of my favorite stories there.
Oh, love that. Love it. Um, and that was in Haunted Bisbee.
Bisbee, yes.
Okay. I was
And then, oh, go
uh-huh.
ahead.
Well, I was
Oh,
I was curious because, like, you're a very good storyteller.
uh,
I heard a story when I was in Tombstone, because I know you talk about the wider, Cochise County, and you do tell some Tombstone stories. But I was curious if you included anything about the John Heath story.
well, I have a great. Um,
I know
this
it's
is a
not a.
great promo for me,
Hmm.
though.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
we are we. I am okay. I've been wanting to do this for years, and I finally we got it. I have a committee, and we're Cochise Historic Productions,
Okay.
and
Okay.
we are this December on the 7th and 8th in Bisbee and Tombstone. We are going to have reenactments of the Bisbee Massacre,
Ooh.
and that's in Bisbee. We're going to have that down in Lowell, and we're going to have some other festivities around it. We're going to have lectures, historical lectures, and then in Tombstone we're doing the same thing. We're going to have reenactment of the actual Bisbee Massacre. Then we're actually going to the courthouse, and we're going to do a reenactment there. We're going to have lectures about John Heath. So we're very excited. And so that's this December.
Okay.
So, yes, I did mention John Heath in Haunted Cochise County.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I know a lot about him. And what story have you heard about him?
Probably the story you're thinking of first, where he got dragged out and
Oh,
and
yeah, yes.
dealt with, I guess.
Right. Well, he was part. He was not an actual shooter, or he wasn't
Hmm.
actually at the Bisbee Massacre because that was a robbery gone wrong.
Hmm.
But he was charged with being an accessory of the crime. They believed he was the mastermind,
Hmm.
and in reality, after all my research, I'm not sure about that. But all I can do is just report the facts that are available in every way. But so he was sentenced to life imprisonment in the Yuma jail, and the Bisbee did not appreciate that very much. They were afraid he was going to appeal it because they said he was guilty as hell. So with Bisbee and some people from Tombstone and miners from some surrounding companies. They actually got him. They pulled him out of the jail cell at 8 o'clock in the morning. The jailer actually thought it was breakfast. They pulled him out, and there's a bunch of action in the courthouse. At one point, they wanted to throw him over the balcony because it's a spiral stairway, and there's a place where you could just do that. Mm-hmm. They said, they were trying to do that, but the mob already took him out the front door. They pulled him off Tough Nut Street, and at the corner, they hung him on a telegraph pole. And I'm just not going to go into too much detail because you can read about it and then you can come and see, the lecture and us talk about it. Mm-hmm. But it is a very savage thing, frontier justice at the time. People didn't, if they didn't like something, they thought they were 100% right and the court was wrong, they took care of it. Yeah. Or sometimes it didn't even go through court.
Yeah. Yeah, there was no questioning if they were right, and they dealt with it immediately. And savage is a good word for it. That's kind of the general, just very violent, general feeling. Well, I walked away from a tour that I took in Tombstone. I was like, holy cow! This was the Wild West.
Right. And 4 people were killed in on Main Street in Bisbee. I guess I should say that. There was the way they did it. I think these guys, after knowing them better, they were young. I think didn't have this is a long time ago. This is a different time as well, but they were just on their own. They didn't really have family. It didn't sound like, and if they did, they left them. Mm-hmm. They did a bunch of robberies. In fact, they were actually accused of being part of the Cowboys, and they 1 or 2 may have been at one point, but as a group they were not. And so the four people were killed on Main Street. One of them, and I think this is what really tipped or towered the opinion of the Bisbee citizens more than anything, it was Annie Roberts, and she was 8 months pregnant, and she was shot and killed. So, and then the unborn child died too. So I think that's what really made them upset, and they didn't want him to get away with it. Any of them to get away with it. And of course, the Bisbee Five, the 5 bandits, they were all hung together at the gallows in the courtyard of the Tombstone courthouse, because at the time Tombstone was the county seat. Then it moved to Bisbee in 1929, and the new building was up in 1931. So,
okay.
And then they stopped the state. Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh no, you're good. You're the guest. You keep talking. You just talk right over me, please. No, my question was, I was curious if there was any paranormal occurrences that directly correlate with, because there's a lot going on in this story. Like one thing led to another, and then this is what they did, and on and on and on. But is there any paranormal occurrences correlating with what took place? That's been reported.
Yes. Well, I have a personal experience, and there's another gentleman who actually had a ghost box, and he was recording, and he got some voices. And one of the times I went, and I was interviewing because it's a state park, so I was interviewing the rangers there, and I was able to be in front of the gallows, and they have a replica set up. So it looks like it did back then, because they tore that down and burned it, I believe. But so I was there recording, and I'm sorry, I'm looking up in my book exactly what the EVP said.
No, that's okay, please.
Okay. So I was, sitting there. I'm like, let's see if, who knows, if anything's here. But, these men died here, so there should be. And the way they died was bad. Yeah. So I was just asking questions, and I didn't hear anything, and I didn't get anything. So when I got home, I started going over my recordings, and I heard in a video, a deep whispering growl from a disembodied voice saying hello. And it was so different. It made me, kind of jump back into my chair. I'm like, what was
Mm-hmm.
that? And I could hear a little laughing. So I got that evidence. And then there's a gentleman named Jeff Woolwine, and he is from Haunted Encounters Adventures, and he did, like I said, he was in the courthouse and he was doing some of the ghost box work.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to him, and he has a video out, and he was just asking questions, and he would say who was here, and the ghost said me, and I am, and then he asked the name, and the answer was Dowd, and Dowd is one of the Bisbee bandits. His name is Dan Dowd, Big Dan Dowd.
Huh.
And as soon as I heard that name, I knew he was, that's who he was talking to.
Yeah.
And then he was asking, "Where are you?" And then he says, "We're outside." And right outside is the gallows.
Oh.
And if you look out the window, it's right there. And then it says some other stuff like "Don't let me out." Don't understand what that means. Then it said Will's outside. Well, there's William Delaney, and he's one of the other guys.
Okay.
And so I was like, and also William Helderman, but I think it's Delaney. So I just think it's really interesting that I caught that EVP, and then in the middle of the day, and I guess it doesn't really matter when, but and then he had all that recording in the courtroom, and also you could hear in the recording that he did. You can hear a whole courtroom going on. You can hear voices. You can hear the gavel of the judge,
Whoa.
and a lot of I talked to Curtis Lindsay. He is the actual manager. He's a ranger, and he says a lot of people tell him that they'll go in there and they'll hear a courtroom, all the noises of it. So I think that's a very powerful room because of all the emotions and everything that happened in there, and I think that's residual.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so yeah, it's a beautiful courthouse. They really took care of it. They're taking care of it. It's a great place to visit, and yeah, I think it's haunted.
Yeah, you know what? People say that Cochise County is the most haunted. Like not just Tombstone, Bisbee, just everything in there. It's so haunted, and it's people discount it like, yeah, whatever, everything's so haunted. No, like this is these stories that you are telling, these experiences that you are telling, all of the stuff that happened. Like it's really that active. Like I was there for like 3 days, and I had stuff happen. Like it's like it's bursting at the seams to happen. Like it's there. I'd recommend to anybody, if you've never made it down to this part of America, do yourself the favor. Just go for a couple of days. Check out the history, check out the hauntings, take a tour. Do it, because like I can't guarantee you'll experience anything, but I mean, like you said, like there's just all this stuff happening just in this one location, just in the courthouse, and you can
Right,
hear it and you can
and that
capture it.
reminded me.
Mm-hmm.
You said about tours. That reminds
Mm-hmm.
me about the Bisbee Ghost App, and it just been created back in April. It's brand
Mm-hmm.
new, and it's owned by Chris Whitney, and I'm one of his writers. And so we talk about all the ghosts in history. Some of the stories are just straight history, but it's got great graphics. He's got narration going on, so you can either hear it or read it. And a new addition to the app is self-guided tours. So you can give yourself a tour with the app in the area of Warren, and then you can do the old Bisbee. It's on Main Street, and then it goes on to the Gulch, and he has several set up, and it's just a fantastic way to do a tour. So it's on your own.
Yeah.
But
Oh, no. I want to dig into the app with you so you can like tell everybody just the cool features in this thing. Like it's not it's whatever you're thinking this is, I don't think you've ever seen an app quite like this. Like, it's written out so well. Like Francine was saying, you can take tours, like they're all set up for you. Like Main Street tour, I see here, Brewery Gulch Red Light District tour. It'll tell you how long it's going to last. You get the description, and then you just start tour, and you can actually listen to the like you're actually on a tour. Like, it is self-guided, but you get to listen to it and see these locations, right?
Right. It's like Elvis and Graceland.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, you you also have hold on, where was it? Hold on. So, yeah, so there's the three options. I kind of want to paint the picture of the app for folks, as I really, really recommend. I downloaded it as soon as I got back from Tombstone, and it's just fabulous. And I
Right.
do recommend that people check it out. If you're a paranormal investigator, if you're not a paranormal investigator, if you're into history, you're a history buff, if you visit Bisbee, visit this area. This is an awesome. I can't, like, I don't know, glow about it more. It's awesome.
Oh.
Grab it. But one of the options, so you've got the map here under locations, and it does pull up the area of Bisbee, and I see some numbers down here in Lowell, of course, but it's so simple to use. You just click one of the little bubbles that pop up, listeners, and then it'll literally give you like a map of all of these sites that you can visit in this area, and tell you about them. But I specifically wanted to ask you about the sensors, the ghost investigating capabilities. Can you talk about those? Why are
Um,
those on there?
that is, I don't, I don't know. That's the
Oh,
owner. He put it on there,
oh,
but he says that, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say because I don't really have the
oh,
information, but
no.
but I think like all the app ones, they do work. You
Hmm.
know, um,
Like the ghost, all the like ghost apps that you can get.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I like this because it's so simple. Even if folks are doubtful of those regular ghost apps that you can get, it's simple enough. Like, it gives you the necessary information, so you can safely use the sensors that are included in this app. So there's one, it measures the barometric pressure in the area immediately surrounding you, and then the other, of course, measures EMF, electromagnetic field, around you. So those are like kind of essential information to have if somebody is interested in just using the app to, test out one of the sites. Go to one of the sites, pull up the sensors, and just check it out. Check it out. Let's see. I think that was all. That was my questions about the app. Oh, no. One more. Are there plans, or do you know, are there plans to actually expand outside of Bisbee and Lowell?
yes. I can't say
Ooh,
too much, but
okay.
yes, yes. And
Okay.
people have been asking, some really cool people have been asking. So,
Mhm.
and the Bisbee Ghost app has actually been ranking at least a top 100 or even the top 50 since it
Mhm.
got launched back in April worldwide. So it's doing very well. And like you said, it's a different way of doing an app. I have never seen anything like that either. So that's when I was approached about it. I'm like, oh well, let me see, and then I could see where before how it was going to look, and I'm like, oh, this is
Mhm.
amazing.
Mhm.
So and then there's some straight history stuff in there as well. One of my favorites is the Gulch Bear, and that has to do with Joseph Muheim. He is my very favorite Bisbee pioneer. Um, he was a mogul. He came from Switzerland. He came to work with his brothers, the Dubachers, in Brewery Gulch. They had a brewery there. They were making beer, and that's why Brewery Gulch is called Brewery Gulch, because of their brewery.
Mhm.
And he started as a bartender. He became so popular that a miner brought him a black bear cub from the Huachuca Mountains. And if you want to know more, you can download the app, or you can read it in Wicked Bisbee. Wicked Bisbee is just straight history, a
This is
dark history.
I'm showing my audience here the, gorgeous little
Oh yeah.
crocheted bears that you had at Tombstone.
Yes,
Thank you for this.
yes.
It sits on my shelf as a reminder of Gulch Bear.
Uh-huh. Well, I after seeing that, he grew up to box the miners and cowboys, and he drank beer, and he loved it.
Of course, you know what? Only in Bisbee.
Exactly. And we do
Well
have a photo of actual Joseph Muheim and his bear, so it's
oh,
just
you
not a
do?
story. Yeah,
Oh, very
you can
cool.
find it online anywhere,
So,
and he's great.
yes, uh, sorry, so sorry. I think there was a pause there. So, audience, yes, please check out the app. Give it a watch, a read, a try. Check out the books. I think yeah, we didn't talk too much about the Wicked Bisbee, but just briefly, is that just history, or is it true crime tied into those stories?
Yeah, it
Okay.
is, and
Okay.
it's just a document of all the bizarre and dark things that happen. Like Bisbee is just thought of as the wealthy mining town, but it also was at one time the Wild West. Obviously, the Bisbee massacre happened there,
Mhm. Mhm.
and one thing it's dark. The Copper Queen Library actually started because uh, there was this. I'll try to be as quick as I can. There was this shootout on Main Street. A Mexican national. He had got thrown out earlier, and he came back, borrowed a friend's rifle. He shot out the bar. He actually shot people and killed, I believe, two people. But he went and hid, and there was a posse. They went looking for him. They found him because it was raining that night, and they found the tracks. And his friend actually said that he stole the rifle. He didn't lend it to him. So
Mhm.
they went and they dragged him to jail, or a place like a jail at the time. And this is 1885. And he was taken and up on, we have a big, they call it Castle Rock.
Mhm.
And it's on the curve of Tombstone Canyon. It's a landmark, and they took him there, and they hung him on a tree, and they left him. So that evening, or that there was a stagecoach coming in from Tombstone, and on it was some high mining executives from New York City, and they came to look at the mining camp because this was exploding millions of dollars. So they came
Mhm.
in, and as they're going around the corner there, they saw the man hanging from the tree in the shadow of him. Then they saw him, and then they actually left the next day. They got back on the train and got out of here
Mm.
there. And so they thought, how can we make that camp much more refined? So they donated several hundred books to the mining camp, and they put a section of the books in the general store, the mining store, the company store.
Mhm.
And then eventually they moved it to where the Copper Queen is now. And that's like the third building. They tore one down, one burned down, and then now it's in its beautiful brick building upstairs. And then downstairs is the U.S. Post Office. So that's the kind of history I wrote about in Wicked Bisbee.
And this is just the kind of stuff you would never know otherwise, like, unless you read the research and the work that you put out there, you would just never know. Most people would never know to ask. So thank you for just documenting this stuff. These are fascinating stories. Thank you for sharing some of that from the books. So folks, we're going to let you know in just a moment where you can purchase these and where you can find and follow Miss Francine. Let's go ahead and do our final segment here, and then we're going to close it out. And hopefully, you still got some time to join me backstage for Patreon. But
Okay.
my first final question for you is: I wanted to know what your thoughts, just in general, on evil with it when it comes to the paranormal. What are your thoughts on evil when it comes to the paranormal?
Well, I can. tell you a recent story, and that explains what where I'm coming from.
Okay.
Okay, so for like again, I'm Catholic, Roman Catholic, baptized, confirmed, and um, even so, I would hunt ghosts, and I would think myself of myself as a medium, because I could I still can hear ghosts. I can see them, um, and I would communicate with them. And when I started the haunted tour, I spoke with the priest at St. Pat's at the time, Father Jonda, and we had a 2-hour conversation. And he was very interested in what I had to say. And he says, as long as I approach it in the way I've been approaching it, that was fine. And he blessed my business. So I'll forward fast, just about a year or two. Oh, it's about a year ago. And I write about, and it's in the Ghost App, and it's in Haunted Cochise County. I write about the Greenway Manor, and it's very haunted. And I was invited to do a seance there, and I invited 2 other people, well-known ghost people, to do it with me. And we had 3. They were very successful. I did the pendulum, and I was able to actually get a talk to some historical figures, and many people of the audience. And so by the second one, there was different communications being done, and one of them was the palms on the table. Everybody puts their hands on the table, and if it vibrates, that's how they're going to communicate. So I never would really. I would just do my own thing, and then I participated that night, and it was there was some, there was different groups, because the table was only so big, because there was a lot of people. There was probably, in that, it's a mansion, so you can only hold about 40 to 50 people. So so I was with I think there's about 6 of us sitting and with our hands on the table. And for some reason, everybody was calling on their grandmothers. And so my maternal grandmother, has been gone since I was 9. So I know what she looks like. I remember what she looks like. And so, I had my eyes closed, and of course it was storming outside. And I could feel her coming towards the table, and I could see her in her clothes. And all of a sudden, as it got to this, and then everybody was saying the table starting to move, and I knew it was from my grandmother. And so as it was coming, all of a sudden it changed, and I knew it wasn't her. It was this very dark, heavy, thick presence.
Oh.
And then I said, in my mind, "You're not my grandmother." And then as soon as I said that, everybody's like, like their voices raised, because the table was moving, and I didn't even realize it. And I had a little battle, and then I started to rebuke it, because then it was like coming to me. So it ended. And then everybody was like exhausted. They thought it was amazing. And then so after that, when I came back home, and for a few weeks I started seeing a black shadow. And then I would hear things in the room, and then I would see things in the corner of my eye, and I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. I actually got the pendulum, and I threw it in the trash. And I don't criticize for anyone doing seances. I don't, I'm not judgmental, but that's my personal experience. And so when we did the seance next time, all I did was my history about the house, the mansion. And people did the communications, and I stayed away from it. So I think that, it's a very fine line that you have to be very careful. I'm not a demonologist, but I know they exist, and I know there's ghosts are human, and I'm not an expert, but I believe that you have to be very careful when you evoke things, when you use things. Uh, they'll just know what you're up against every time you're opening yourself.
Yeah.
To anything that's paranormal, and
Yeah.
that even goes with ghost hunting and communicating with ghosts, and and everything. But I do ask, I pray for the protection of myself whenever I do. Um, if I feel something, or if I'm hunting, I haven't gone on a ghost hunt in a bit, but there is a very sense degree of evil and just regular paranormal, and I know anybody who has felt it or will feel it. It's so different, you know. If
Okay.
people, if ghosts and demons, there's hell and there's heaven and there's God. So there's both. There's the devil, there's God. So uh,
Okay.
I believe in that way. So
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. Second question. As a paranormal historian, have you learned historic info that you didn't know before due to the actual haunting or the evidence that came from it?
um, well, let's see. Doing history, and this is several years ago, and then writing Wicked Bisbee. It just kind of came together.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the Copper Queen Hotel. Uh, and in my original book, I wrote about. I mean, I know the stories, but I wrote about the little boy, and I actually had flashes of him, and he actually told me his story in that book.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is there's a story about oh my goodness, the female Lo, Julia Lowell. There you go. And so I never researched her, but then when I was writing Haunted Bisbee, I really had to find out who this woman was.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no document of anyone killing themselves. There's no the only people who have died there have been recent years that's documented. And when something like that would happen, they would definitely talk about it, even though it was Phelps Dodge and that the high ups. But uh, there is also, and they say that she was a prostitute. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the red light district at the time of the hotel was already it was actual a district, so it was legal, but it was up the gulch, and it was actually up on Upper Prairie Gulch, and that's on the cusp of where the Mexicans, Nationals, Mexican Americans, and the Yaqui Indians, their neighborhood, they actually were kind of in there in the same place. So when you got to where the hotel is, uh, they wouldn't allow that kind of thing to be seen by families. So I just always thought that was kind of it'd be implausible for that to have a prostitute there working out of a place like that. Because it was a whole different era, but it was, like I said, legal up more, but not, they wouldn't have allowed something like that. So, but
Right.
you never know. So when I was, the story is that it was a little, uh, okay, wait, I am so sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm going from there. I'm thinking of the Oliver House. So, oh yeah, and the Copper Queen, the Julia Lowell story. There was a gentleman named Michael London, and he was a town historian. And in the '90s, there was a murder mystery night,
Mm-hmm.
and he and another fellow, they wrote scripts, and she's actually Julia Lowell is a made up person in the script. So that's where that story comes from. But I apologize. So
Oh, you're
in
good.
the Oliver House, there is supposed to be a massacre, and there's no documentation anywhere of that. Newspapers, the state capitol, when they used
Mm-hmm.
to do the fish films, uh, any books, nothing. So when I know that place is haunted though, but I don't think there was ever a massacre there. And when I was doing Wicked Bisbee in the Johnston edition, a neighborhood that doesn't even exist anymore because they made the Lavender Pit, and it's across from it. But there's other things that they destroyed. They destroyed the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
There was uh, a border house. They call it an apartment house, and that's the same thing the Oliver House is, but it's in Old Bisbee, and in the the one in the Johnson edition, there was a couple that lived across the street from him in a house, and it turns out the wife was across the street having an affair with a guy in one of the apartments. Well, they were all friends. The poor husband didn't know what was going on, but so he was going like having problems with his wife, and so she didn't come home one night. So he went across the way and he just knocked. He had thoughts that maybe it was this guy, so he went in and they were both asleep in the bed, and he shot both of them in the head. They had a liquor bottle in the middle of them, killed them both. He left the apartment, and the couple next door were his friends as well. The husband was, stopping him because they heard the gunfire, and he actually shot him in the chest. Then the wife was screaming, and he tried to kill her too, but either the gun got jammed or there was no more bullets. So he ran across the street, and they had a little girl, and she uh, was in the house, and he went and he killed himself. And so that story is horrific, but
Yeah.
it is totally documented, and it says it was in the Johnson edition, and they've used that same uh, scenario
Hmm.
at the Oliver House.
Okay.
So either they did it on purpose or they got it confused. So that's one of the things that I found out, that it really happened, but not there.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay. Okay. Awesome. All right. Final question for you. This will be easy one. Sorry, that was a hard one. I apologize. Easy one. Someone is visiting Bisbee for the first time and wants to do something haunted. What is the one place, if they could only do one, what is the one place you would send them? You would recommend they go?
I would send them to the city park, because that's in the Gulch, and that's something you don't have to buy a ticket for. You just walk right in onto it, and you can do whatever you want. You can have an investigation, you can do recording, and you most likely will get something, and take photos. Because the city park is the Pioneer Cemetery. It used to be. It was the original cemetery in Bisbee, and in 19 it was made into a city park by 1916, but it had the pioneer, the original people who were there buried, and they moved all those bodies over to Evergreen Cemetery in Lowell. And when I had said earlier, we lived up on Tombstone Canyon, and my because the mines closed, my parents lost their home, so we moved into a house down on the Gulch, which is above City Park. And so at the time, I used to have two basketball, backboards, and I would go, and I was in, I think the sixth, seventh grade, and I would go down. Okay, my house is there on the top on below up Upper Drive, and below there's a street, and then below that is the city park. That's how everything is, like on layers in Bisbee.
Hmm.
And then up below the park is Brewery Gulch. So there's a park, it's all cement, and it's got a great grandstand, and it's got cement bleachers, huge ones. And then below it they made offices.
Okay.
So
Okay.
they carved out the mountain,
Oh.
so anyway, so as a junior high kid, I would go and walk to my right from the house down the stairs, and that's right into an entrance. And then there's another entrance where you can actually drive a car if you had to.
Hmm.
And so down the stair entrance, I would see at the opening there, I would see a young boy, and but he wasn't there. It was a ghost.
Hmm.
So because I thought everybody saw ghosts, and I was kind of used to it, and so it scared me, but not enough to make me leave. And
Hmm.
so I would see him often. So then, back in the early 2000s, I my friend and I, and she Debbie Browning, she does ghost workshops, and we've been friends for like over 20 years. So she had read my book, I had wrote about it, and then she said she had experiences there too. So we went back there along with another friend, Sheila, and so we decided to document what happened. And so she said that, yeah, she didn't see a boy, but when she would walk in the same areas, she would feel dizzy. She would feel like electricity went through her. And then when she did a workshop one year, she went back home in Phoenix, and she said for several days in the mirror, she saw a boy standing behind her. And so Debbie's
Ugh.
very petite. She's like
Mhm.
4'9". So if the boy that I saw, that would make sense because they're about the same height. And so we did a seance with a stick. We just put a stick on the ground, and she had a VHS tape. This is how long ago. And so she recorded it, and we asked a series of questions. He did remember who I was.
Mhm.
And at the end of it, it turns out that he is there protecting the gravesite of his mother. He believes
Whoa.
she's still there. and
Oh.
and so he doesn't want people to go over her, and apparently it's right by the gate. And we know that all of the bodies were taken out. They were very careful because they raised, a committee raised to do that and make a play park. But it was a very important thing to do to make sure all the bodies were gone, even though that it was the records were not kept well. But they did, like I said again, they have offices below, so it's very unlikely. But I really don't believe there's bodies there anymore. But this
Okay.
ghost boy really believes that she's still there.
Oh, that
And,
is heartbreaking, though. That is so
and so
sad.
when I would do tours, I would park the cart and walk down the stairs and bring people down there and stand there.
Mhm.
And oh my goodness, so many things happen there. I would wear a costume with a big bow in the back. And one time, people were there, talking or sitting, and some of them kind of were behind me, and they saw, and I felt that bow untie. And I'm like, what? And so every time I'm there, he comes right to me. He knows who I am. And so I always tell people, and I'm getting the chills, if they go and they talk to him or whoever else is there that I have not seen, to make sure that they stay there. They're not allowed to follow you home, because I know he followed Debbie home. So whenever you go, just make sure to tell him he can't follow you. So that's an easy place to go, free.
Okay. All right. You heard her, peeps. Get down to Bisbee, check out the city park and everything else. All right. That is all I've got for you today. Francine, why don't you tell my audience where they can find and follow you online if you like that, and also where they can pick up copies of your books?
Sure. Well, I'm on TikTok. I think it's under Francine Powers, the copper miner's daughter, and Instagram, just my name, Francine Powers. Facebook, I was off for several years, so I just got back on. And you can buy my book anywhere, online, Amazon, the big chain bookstores, and in Tombstone and Bisbee, Douglas, Sarah Vista. They have them everywhere, so it's really great.
Okay. And to close out the episode, would you like to leave us with any final thoughts, words of wisdom, or a piece of advice?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's
Of
just a
course.
great podcast. And just that, again, please do your research before you go to a site. Otherwise, it's going to, I don't want it to be a waste of your time. Just because you heard a story somewhere, I would research the history and the actual ghost, and have fun. Be careful, protect yourself in every which way. And you never know, you might stumble upon a ghost or spirit that needs help. And you just being there might be a good coping instrument for them, and they might not be stuck anymore. But anyway, just have a great time, and thank you for listening to me today.
Paranormal historian and author Francine Powers. Thank you so much for joining me. I am sincerely grateful to you, Ms. Powers, for appearing on the show today. My beautiful lads and handsome lasses, check out the links below to follow Francine online and to pick up copies of her books. Also, consider getting the Bisbee Ghost App from the App Store. Last week, it was sitting at number 81 in travel on the App Store. It's incredibly popular for a reason and very inexpensive for what it offers. Whether you are a history buff or you just crave haunted content, you're going to find what you're looking for in this app. Follow the Paranorm Girl podcast on social and YouTube at Paranorm Girl Pod. If you enjoy watching while you listen, be sure you sub to my channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss new episodes every week. Support for the Paranorm Girl podcast is brought to you by Patreon and the good folks over there hanging out in my corner. My patrons are a huge source of motivation and support for the weekly programming. And as a way to show my appreciation, I work hard to bring them exclusive content that is for their eyes only because they are so special to me. They are currently enjoying my backstage guest chat with Francine. We talked shadow people, a personal favorite topic of mine, what effects they can have on folks, what else could they be? It got pretty spooky in the backstage area, just in time for spooky season. My patrons also enjoy the perks of being first to see my video episodes, first to get announcements and hear about any upcoming events. They get exclusive access to private movie nights and streams with me. We recently watched Giganto, the real King Kong, and it was excellent, of course. Doug Highcheck sent me a copy following his appearance on the show, and it took everything in me to not watch the dang thing before I could share it with my patrons for our private movie night together. It was worth the wait. You know what else patrons get to enjoy? Accolades. Michael, host of the Extreme Paranormal podcast, devoted listener, turned awesome guest 2 times on this show thus far, turned good friend, joined my higher education tier, and I am beyond thankful. Mike, welcome to the dark side, bud. I know you are really looking forward to this season in particular. Ghosts are your jam. I'm going to do my damnedest to bring it, brother. And I am so grateful to have your support while I'm going for it. If you are interested in joining Mike and the rest of the PGP patrons, visit patreon.com/Paranorm Girl Pod. Don't forget, Paranorm Girl now has a story recording line. 208-717-1655 is the number. It is an open line, so call in with any spooky experience that you have had. Leave your name and the location where the event took place, and then tell your story. If you need more than the 3 minutes that the system allows, just hit redial and pick up right where you left off. All these stories are going to be played on an upcoming Spectral Shorts episode, and any stories that align with the season subject, ghosts and hauntings, will be featured at the top of an upcoming deep dive episode. That is going to wrap today's show. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a great rest of your week, everyone, and I will see you back here next time. Until then, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.